Greetings and welcome to our daily walk through the scripture for April the 27th. Today your readings came in Judges chapter 18, finishing that one up, and reading Judges chapter 9, verses 1 through 21. Luke chapter 23, we're going to finish it out, and then we start Luke chapter 24, going through the first 12 verses. And then we read Psalm 99 and Proverbs chapter 14, verses 9 through 10. We're going to talk about Judges today. Gideon was so close, okay? I mean, here's a guy who was tentative, had courage issues, and God gave him boldness and showed him this is what you need to do. And he did it, and they did great things, and he was rocking it out, and he was doing really good stuff. And then all of a sudden, in verse 22 of Judges chapter 8, the Israelites said, hey, you need to come rule over us. And Gideon gives the right answer. He says, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. We're going to let the Lord rule over you. And this is all good. He's rocking it out. And he says, all I want you to do, though, is I want to take a little bit of the share of the plunder. And they're like, all right, we can do that. We can do that. Let's do that. So Gideon takes the gold and he melts it into an ephod. Now, what is an ephod? Well, it could be a couple of different things, but generally as a rule, it's a garment. Okay? It would be like a big old chainmail robe in this case, all right? That's kind of how ephods are usually described. We don't exactly know what this is, but if it is a robe in this case, they worshipped a robe. In verse 27, all Israel prostituted themselves by worshiping it there. So basically, whatever it was that the ephod is, if it was the robe like people talk about, then they hung the robe up and people literally went and they worshipped a robe. There are no words to describe the astoundingness. Is that a word? I'm flummoxed at this. And I look at it and I go, how in the world can the people of Israel worship a robe? And then I realize we worship sillier things than that all the time. We worship celebrities. We worship people that pretend to be other people. We worship famous people. I mean, my goodness, there are people that obsess over the British royal family. We worship money. That's kind of a given. But we worship athletes. We worship people that are able to put a basketball into a hoop or kick an oblong ball into an upright or throw it really well. We actually worship things that are just as silly as a robe. We worship inanimate objects. We worship Mother Earth. We worship the trees. We worship the stars. We worship the moon. We worship things that are just as silly as a robe. And what happens when we worship these things? Well, we get lost. Or even worse happens. I mean, if you continue to read in Judges chapter 8 and then chapter 9, we get a taste of Gideon's son. And what he does, Gideon's son becomes so jealous of everything that's going on that Abimelech goes and he kills all of his brothers, which, for the record, 70 sons. I mean, Gideon, many wives is an understatement, I think. 70 sons, but Abimelech goes and he kills all of these sons. Not even a legitimate son, this is a concubine son. And he goes and he does this and he rules over the people. All because it started with a robe. It sounds ludicrous, but we do the same thing. We start little and we work our way into worshiping bigger and bigger things. And suddenly we can look back and go, how in the world did it all begin? I remember having a conversation with a friend one time. And he literally got into spending time with ladies of the night. And and you wonder, how do you get there? How do you get from that point? And the bottom line is it started a little bit. It started with an addiction to pornography. And the fantasy took over, and it carried further and further and further and further until he wrecked and destroyed relationships because of that choice. And the good news is God's grace abounds, and there's always opportunity for grace, and no shortage of it there. But if you wonder how you can go from a robe to killing 70 brothers, it's not as hard as you think. We need to be on guard. We need to be watching. Be careful of idolatry. Be careful of the things that we worship, and make sure that we are worshiping the Lord our God only. Okay, there's our thought for today. We'll talk next time.